He awoke to Catria weeping again. Soft whimpers in the darkness. She had learned by now not to sob, for which Cyrus was grateful. Majak had threatened to strangle her that first night, as they all huddled together in the stinking torrent, Catria pressed against Cyrus, holding tight as she wept seemingly endless tears. "Shut her up," Majak had growled, levering himself away from the green-slimed sewer wall. His uniform was in tatters, and he had lost his rifle somewhere in the chaos above. But he was a large man, and his soldier's hands seemed very strong as he lurched towards them, reaching for Catria's sodden blouse, hissing, "Quiet, you silly bitch!" He'd stopped as Cyrus's knife pressed into the meaty flesh below his chin. "Leave her be," he whispered, wondering at the steadiness of his own voice. The knife, a wide-bladed butcher's implement from the kitchen of his father's house, was dark red from tip to handle, a souvenir from the start of their journey to this filthy refuge. Majak bared his teeth in a defiant snarl, eyes meeting those of the youth with the gory knife, and seeing enough dire promise to let his hands fall. "She'll bring them down here," he grated. "Then you had better hope you can run faster than us," Cyrus told him, removing the knife and tugging Catria deeper into the tunnel. He held her close, whispering comforting lies into her ear until the sobs faded into a piteous mewling. There had been 10 of them that first night, 10 desperate souls huddling in the subterranean filth as Moorsvale died above. Despite Majak's fears, their enemies had not been drawn to the sound of Catria's sobs. Not then and not the night after. Judging by the continuing cacophony audible through the grates, Cyrus suspected that the invaders had found sufficient sport to amuse themselves, at least for the time being. But, of course, that didn't last. 10 became 9 on the 5th day, when hunger drove them out in search of supplies. They waited until nightfall before scurrying forth from a drain on Ticker Street, where most of the city's grocers plied their trade. At first, all seemed quiet. No piercing cries of alarm from a disturbed Drake, no patrols of spoiled to chase them back into the filth. Majak broke down a shop door, and they filled several sacks with onions and potatoes. Cyrus had wanted to head back, but the others, increasingly convinced by the continual quiet that the monsters had gone, decided to take a chance on a nearby butcher's shop. They were making their way back along a narrow alley towards Halewell Market, laden with haunches of beef and pork, when it happened. A sudden rattling growl, the brief blur of a flashing tail, and one of their number was gone. She had been a middle-aged woman from some minor administrative post in the Imperial Ring, her last words a garbled plea for help before the Drake dragged her over the edge of the rooftop above. They hadn't waited to hear the screams, fleeing back to their grimy refuge and dropping half their spoils in haste. Once back underground, they fled deeper into the sewers. Simlian, a stick-thin youth of criminal leanings, had some familiarity with the maze of pipes and tunnels, leading them to the central hub, where the various waterways converged to cast effluent into a great shaft where it would be carried out to sea. At first, the roaring torrent had been filthy, but as the days passed, the water grew ever more clean. "Think there's anyone left?" Majak muttered one day. Cyrus reckoned it to be a month or more after their abortive foray. It was hard to keep track of the days here. Majak's dull-eyed gaze was lost in the passing waters. The soldiers' previous hostility had subsided into a listless depression Cyrus knew to be born of hunger and despair. Despite the strictness with which they rationed themselves, they had perhaps 2 more days before the food ran out. "I don't know," Cyrus muttered, although he had a strong suspicion these 9 starving souls were in fact all that remained of Moorsvale's population.
Wasn't our fault, you know?
The listlessness in Majak's gaze disappeared as it swung toward Cirrus, his voice colored by a plea for understanding.
There were so many. Thousands of the bastards, drakes and spoiled. Moradin took all but a handful of the garrison to fight the corporates. We had no chance.